Welcome to Nothing Less Than Extraordinary, and an amazing podcast dedicated to ordinary people like you and I that have done extraordinary things in our life. I want this to be a human celebration of the human struggle in this journey called life through its up and down and twist and turn. May their life stories inspire you to reach your greatness and to reach your full potential. It is going to be a lot of fun, lighthearted, and raw in all its form. We will cover topics such as love, depression, divorce, parenting, woman in business, anxiety, addiction, self-love, forgiveness, and so many more. I am super thrilled and honored to have you here. My name is Ridon. May you have a great listening. Welcome, everybody, to Nothing Less Than Extraordinary. For those who are just tuning in and it's your first time, welcome with us. Super excited to have you. Thank you for tuning in, for listening. I have my fabulous Brian, who is my coach, and I love and adore. And he was gracious to help me out because I had another interviewee. I had to reschedule. And I just threw it out there in the universe. It's like, universe, who should I ask? I really like Brian. So I said, Brian, what do you think? Would you be available? And he said, sure, why not? And we wing it on a topic and he could just talk about anything. So Brian, I am very grateful for you. Thank you for being here.
It's great to be here, although it is 4 a.m. We have to get this. We're joking around. It's not that early, but it's just...
No, that's it. I love his sense of humor. I love a good laugh. So being with Brian is therapy for me. So this is great. But also he's a great role model for me and a great leader. So I feel blessed to having it and to have him in my life. So a brief intro, because I did an interview of Brian a while back, a couple months back. Definitely worth checking that one out on relationship as well, on relationship then. But today we are all going to be talking about relationship, but it's building a trusting relationship with children, how important that is. And a little intro about Brian. Brian is a hypnotherapist and he does so many zillion things. I don't know how in his schedule. He's like this magic schedule maker and he just shows up for people that really needs it. I mean, like for me, he was so thoughtful. It's his day off today. I want to highlight that. And because I have things planned.
And it is 4 a.m.
Have things planned on the weekend. He was so sweet. He like it's his day off sleeping and he wakes up like super early for me to do this. So Brian, thank you. You are hypnosis and you are beyond so much more. So what other things do you do, Brian?
Well, it's probably easier just to sort of describe. I mean, I have different companies that do different things. One is leadership development, leadership and business, heart-centered business coaching. Another one is personal transformation work, $1 Million Feeling. Then I've got, I think you're even showing up once in a while for these things, which is for what I call an entrepreneurial launchpad, which is a no-cost mastermind class I do for people who are kind of bringing their life and business together in the same thing and getting going. And a whole bunch of other things, the names of which are less important. And then, you'll put my contact information up there anyway, I'm sure. And then people can go and see everything that I do, to serve. But the idea is, may sound to some people as like an incredible number, but it's very real for me that in my lifetime, through the work that I do and the butterfly effect, everybody else doing the things that come from my working with them. So through direct and indirect contact, I will positively change the lives of at least 1 billion people while I'm here. And that's what I do. That's how, that's the mission. And all these other things are just affectations inside of that. And they all use very similar tools. So even though it may look like I do a lot, it's really the same kind of energy. It's about helping people, guiding people to their best journeys. So with that, and you know that because we work together on things and things like that. So let's get to our. What do you think our theme? What is our theme now? We're like talking about beating up kids, making sure we beat kids into submission.
We would be in serious trouble if that was the theme.
But our theme is really about making sure we create those special bonds
Hmm.
with children so that they know they can count on us, right?
Exactly, exactly. And I thought it was beautiful to mention that because anyway, Brian to me is a great male role model to his beautiful daughter, which I hope to one day get the chance to meet. So he adopted a daughter, and I want him to be able to describe how that journey was like going from being thinking of not wanting having any children to deciding, okay, I'll have a kid, but not even make your own kid, to adopt a kid, to bring them, to give them a better life, and then thinking I'm just going to play the role of being the earner in the home, to being extremely close to your daughter and the beautiful relationship that you have today. I think that for me, it's one that's really big and huge to be highlighted. I always say all the time, I don't ever forget the reason why I exist, that I'm still alive on this earth, and I am the strong woman that I am today. It's all thanks to my wonderful parent for loving me unconditionally despite everything. Yes, they give me a hard time. Yes, they are annoying sometimes, but
That's a parent's job sometimes.
exactly, because I'm sure I'm like that to my kid as well. I don't think they think I'm always cool. But I think the fact that despite all of that, I can't, I thank the universe for giving me so many things in my life. But one big one is to have these amazing parents that I love and adore to death. I really just don't see myself as existing without them. So, Brian, I'm sure in many deep ways, you must be that guiding light for your daughter as well.
Well, thanks for saying that. She'll be turning 21 in just a few days. So, as a responsible parent, I'm taking her out drinking. She's now legally able to drink.
Yes,
So,
because Brian,
um,
you're in the state.
so yeah, we're in the States here. So, legal age in the United States is 21, and she'll be turning 21. And her mother and I will be taking her out to celebrate her first public
Oh.
legal drink. And so, and her mother and I are divorced, but we're still friends. We're good friends, actually. So that's an important part of being there for your children too. Is that if you have a divorce that takes place, which can happen, people can grow apart, or they can have other needs that aren't getting fulfilled, or whatever the case may be. And then if people can kind of like shelve their their discomfort and their hurt, or whatever the case may be, for the purposes of keeping those bonds with the children or child. And I only have the one at the moment. I don't think I'll have any others. Or at least there could be. There actually, I'm assuming there aren't any others out that I don't know about either. So the but the idea is that the bond with a child should be of paramount importance. Like all the relationship issues we might have as adults, if we have kids in the picture, those have to be put on the back burner, or given second fiddle, or whatever other phrase you want to have, because when you've got a child, that is the top responsibility. Period.
Yeah.
And even if it means giving of yourself, and if you can't do it, which could be an honest answer. You're still such a child yourself, or having, like, some people, maybe they are children when they have children. That's happened, and they haven't had a chance to grow up and things like that. And some children who have children can't rise to the occasion. Then there could be cause to let the child be reared by other family members, perhaps, or put up for adoption or things like that, because there is a responsibility for that child to get access to trusting, bonding relationships. So, and then you had mentioned before, since you know enough of my history, you put it out on the table. But I think it's important for everybody to know maybe the larger scope of the story is that my father was an extremely rageful and volatile and violent man, and there were a lot of factors that fed that, which looking back on it, I can talk more about it in other terms for other conversations. But as a child, things that would make him angry. And often I was the trigger, but even if I wasn't the trigger, if I was in the room, I was the target.
Mm.
And I just remember discovering along the way that very often how we were parented becomes how we parent.
Yeah.
You see the cycles of this all the time, and then you hear this in the voices of even comedians and people who go like, I promised I would never do what my mom did to me. And then I did it, like the voices that are in there. So you find yourself, it's quite possible for us to repeat those things that were done to us, to the kids that we may be responsible for. And I was determined to not let a child suffer at the hand of what my father was like. And my mother was kind of, in many ways, a passive energy in that journey. She ultimately did divorce my father, which was, I think, helped in some ways. But my mother wasn't. She actually has. I've even talked to her recently. She's now in her late 80s, and I talked to her recently about this. She has no memory of how my father showed up in these things. So it's kind of interesting how she not only was passive, but she blocked it out. So when you look at these things and you go like, I'm going to break the cycle. I'm not going to do to children that which was done to me. I'm not even going to risk it. But then I met a woman who wanted kids. And in fact, kids with a big S on the end. So she really wanted kids. And I felt like, well, I really love her. I can't see marrying her and denying her kids. That would not be a sound marriage, So and we made it 24 years. So maybe it wasn't such a sound marriage, but it was sound enough that we made it 24 years. So, but inside of it, I still recognize the fact that if I was totally anti-kid and I was going to have a wife who wanted kids and was going to deny her that, then we would not really have a marriage that was on good footing. And so I came up with that great idea you shared and said, I was just going to be the earner. What I called is I was going to orbit. I was going to make the money and I was going to orbit. Let her do all the kid stuff. I was just going to be there. And part of that was, again, to insulate me from being responsible for doing to a child that which was done to me, because I was convinced that, at least at some point on my journey, I was convinced that that kind of parenting was always going to happen. It wasn't something you could correct. Right. So, but when we got married, and even before we got married, I started studying relationships between parents and their children and watching it. I could be in the mall and watching how parents were behaving and how children were behaving. I could go to a dinner party and see how parents were behaving and children were behaving. And, just everywhere I went, I was saying, oh, I like that. Oh, I don't like that. I love that. Oh, I intensely dislike that. And I would look to see if I could calculate what was going on. When a child was like having a meltdown, what was happening inside of that thing? I'm going, that I can't stand. Meltdowns, can't stand it. I want to kill everybody. Energetically, it was so intrusive to me because it was probably triggering more than anything else. But it was just like all kinds of things were happening when I was watching all these family dynamics. And you would see cases where children were respectful. Sometimes they were too robot-like. Yes, ma'am. No, ma'am. That kind of stuff. And I felt like, well, that's not comfortable for me either. I don't want children to be in that. When I was a kid, I had heard this phrase, children should be seen and not heard. That's not a healthy dynamic either, because children should always be have the room to express. Yeah. So anyway, and I interviewed people. I talked to lots and lots of people about, tell me about your relationship with your parents. Tell me about your relationship with your children, if they had them. Tell me about what works for you, what doesn't work for you. And I actually came up with kind of a business plan, since I was an entrepreneur all my life, and I had, built out business plans for all these businesses I had established over the years. And I came up with a business plan for being a parent, or a mission statement might be a better way to say it. But the idea is that there is a goal with a child, and that is to get that child into adulthood, happy, largely happy. Happiness is not a guarantee, but largely happy and fulfilled and loving and contributory
Mm.
and passionate about life and things like that. So I had this kind of a mission statement. And so then you have to make a decision inside of that is when you're having parenting activities, what is it you're going to do to get them there?
Mm-hmm.
What are the activities you're going to support and not support? What are the things you're going to say yes or no to, so that your child does arrive into adulthood in that state of seeking or finding levels of fulfillment that make their life meaningful and things like that, and loving and so on. And then I found out probably one of the most important things after interviewing a lot of people. I found one of the most important things is to honor children.
Mm.
So many parents that when I saw the troubled relationships with kids were not honoring their child. They were corralling them. They were controlling them. They were dismissing them in some cases because it was not about, the child's expression had maybe a trigger for the parent or whatever the case may be. And I look back on this and I'm thinking, if it wasn't for this mission statement and then other maturation things that had happened on my own over the years, I would not have been the parent that I was. And so when I found this, like, honor your child, it was almost like the key, what does it mean to honor your child? Being patient. There are all kinds of subtext to this. Being patient at all costs. Like, I can tell you, I lost my temper on my daughter 3 notable times during our relationship as when she was a child. And each one of those times, there were things I had to do to correct that. And I'll talk about that in a second. But being patient at all costs is a very important attribute. And then also taking judgment out of things.
Yeah.
There was all these little, for the most part, let's just say honor, patience, judgment, obviously love. I think it's possible to befriend your child as long as you don't abdicate parent responsibilities. Like, I see some parents will be friends with their kids at all costs.
No.
And then the child can start running the household.
Yeah.
So there's all kinds of things. There have to be some boundaries, healthy boundaries, by the way. Yeah. And then the other thing is not to discredit a child. So when they have an idea, you don't ever say, "Oh, that's a dumb idea." That would be like the most horrific thing you can do.
Yeah.
It turns out a lot of these things came to play, just to give people perspective on this, is a lot of these things came to play out as when I started doing the hypnotherapy many years ago. One of the things that was inside of that was learning the human condition and understanding what motivations are and things like that. And you wouldn't be surprised, really, in terms of the work that you do, but you'd be surprised how many people, their challenges can take some memory that happened to them as a child that completely set the trajectory of their life. And their self-worth issues or betrayal or abandonment or whatever else that might be taking place and what's going on. I can say that those clients I work with who were trying to lose weight, for example, they remember when a parent said, "Oh, you're getting fat," or something to that effect. 4th grader, you're popping your jeans out. That shouldn't be happening. So it creates body image questions. Instead of, it's not surprising to me because of what I did in that observational period, which was several years. It was 4 or 5 years. Yeah. It's not surprising to me how a parent's words can not just sting in the moment, but sting for a lifetime.
I agree.
And sting in different ways. It could shut down curiosity. It could shut down independence. It can shut down creativity, self-worth, confidence. It can do a lot of a lot of challenges. And I wasn't aware of all those things quite so much as I am today because of the additional work I've done over the years. But at the time, it was very clear: is if you don't honor your child, you are not trusting that child, or you're not loving that child. You're not leaving judgment on the in the background. You're not allowing a child to express themselves.
Mm.
I figured out very, very quickly that those are how you get a child to adulthood in a healthier place.
Mm-hmm.
And I will say this: I don't want anybody beating themselves up for this.
Yeah.
There's something will happen. The child's brain will process something in a certain way that they still get to adulthood with issues.
Yeah.
The issue is how do we minimize that? How do
Yeah.
we make sure we're not the cause of all those issues? you know, so because the thing is not to put your child on the therapy couch. That's the whole point. They can give them the tools to navigate life in a healthy way is what's going on, because they're going to have issues. That's part of the human condition, is
Mhm.
having issues and learning and developing and becoming our best version of ourselves, and
Yeah.
or revealing the best version of ourselves and living that version and so on. The so so anyway, I'm maybe just rattling on here, but I wanted to go
It's
back,
okay.
going
It's
back
important.
going back to the ideas is that jokingly, I was a road warrior. I was in business. I was on the road 200 plus nights a year, and so we weren't having a child.
Mm-hmm.
And now part of it was I was kind of stalling it
Mm-hmm.
because, yeah, let's put it, my wife and I would have fun,
Mm-hmm.
so to speak, but we weren't having fun that was creating kids.
Right.
And part of the thing too is that I wasn't home to make that biological cycle connection work.
Mm.
So I actually got this message: you don't have to be here to be the father of the child I'm going to have. So
Okay.
she was joking and she was serious at the same time. Like she was saying, like, something's got to change.
Mm-hmm.
And and during the course of this, my wife's more than mine, but friends of ours were just beginning the adoption process for a little girl from China.
Mm-hmm.
And I talked about it with my wife, and she goes, "Yeah, we could do that." Because my wife didn't have to have a biological child; she just wanted kids.
Okay.
And for some reason, also in my journey, it always had this sort of background story in my head that any kids I had would have been adopted.
Oh, okay.
I didn't. That suddenly materialized
Right.
in that time period. It's just I didn't realize that it had been a background thing. It says if I ever had kids,
Mm.
they would be adopted, and I didn't know where that came from, whatever the case. But now it's sort of like all lined up.
Mm.
And it took 22 months from pen to paper to child
Wow.
in hands,
Right.
because 9/11 fell right in the middle of that.
Okay. Oh.
And all the legal paperwork got stalled in the building called Federal Plaza in New York City. They got stalled right there, and that building was shut down for months.
Mm.
And our paperwork was there. So it took a lot longer. It should have been about 14 months or so. It was more like 22 months.
Mm-hmm.
So then when we went to China to become a family
Mm-hmm.
in 2002,
Okay.
and we're at the government offices. Some families went straight to an orphanage, and we were in one of those families that went to a government office where the child from the orphanage was brought
Mm-hmm.
to you.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a picture, and we were advised, don't fall in love with the picture, don't fall in love with the child until you get the child in your arms, because it can be, if something goes wrong, which could, paperwork or something could go wrong, then you're heartbroken and you haven't even been a family yet, and all these other things would take place. But three children were brought in.
Mm-hmm.
One was an infant. One was this 13-month-old, which was Mackenzie, our daughter,
Mm-hmm.
and another one was a slightly older child for another family.
Mm-hmm.
And for whatever reason, I beat my wife to this little girl, scooped her up, the first child I'd ever held,
Uh-huh.
and could not let go.
Mm. Mm. It's
So
beautiful. Yeah.
yeah.
Mm.
And
How did that change?
in
Yeah.
that moment, I had a development experience also, a personal development experience. The universe kind of turned inside out because as I was grabbing her and holding her,
Mm.
there was kind of an inversion feeling that took place. Like the universe just flipped inside out.
Mm.
And I suddenly realized I was no longer, because I was a fairly self-centered individual.
Mhm.
I was no longer the center of the universe.
It's funny how that is possible because I hear these stories about men's and actor who have they were so self-centered on themselves, so used to, their own needs, what they wanted, and then finally decided to commit and settle down with a woman and just thought similar pattern to you, like, oh, just, if she wants kids, because, I married that woman and she wants kid, I'll just, and then something happened because you hear a few times stories of then something happened and then you have this beautiful child in front of you and all of a sudden it's hard to explain because it's an emotional connection. You just realize you love this little child so much more than yourself that it was no longer about you anymore. So maybe that's what was able to create the change that turned your world inside out. I don't know. I couldn't possibly describe. I can only imagine. But I'm thinking if you love something so badly, could that change everything that you knew about yourself? Would you be willing to change your identity? I think the love aspect of that can really does a powerful just on a person.
Well, you do relationship work, right? So, like the one of the most important relationships, in fact, it may be the most important relationship in our journeys, is with ourselves. And I'm not going to go in. That could be another 2-hour conversation, but this self-centeredness that I'm describing to you was a defense mechanism that I developed for myself as I was growing up because of partly my relationship with my father and his volatility, and my mother who kind of just, she wasn't a sheep. But standing up to the energy of my father, it was not a healthy thing to do sometimes. So she was in survival mode, and so I learned survival mode from the earliest of ages. I was like learning what I needed to do to survive. So by the time I'm arriving into this adult period, and by the way, I'm a later parent. I'm 42 years old when I'm holding this child in my arms. Some people are in their 20s and 30s. My first child, I was 42 years old. So I've been working on some stuff, even when I didn't even know I was working on it, and shedding some of those things, like the rage of my father was no longer inside of me, even though it was. If I had had a child when I was in my 20s, I probably would have been just like him.
Yeah.
Those kinds of things were taking place. So the universe was putting these things in place for me, to show up in a certain way, to have certain kinds of evolutions and developments and awarenesses and things like that. Although I would say at that point, with my daughter in my arms, I was still a highly unaware person.
Okay.
Like, because when you're that selfish and also fragile egoed as I was, and things like that, when you're that kind of person, that self-absorbed, you're usually a very reactive person, not a very aware person.
Right.
And in that case, I was highly reactive. But there was these awareness things that were taking place, because I was like, well, I'm going to be a parent. I better learn something. And so I did that studying thing. But I was treating it almost like a science.
Right.
Like, that you're going to get the perfect kid and you're going to be the perfect parent, and good luck with that. But the idea is that you have better understanding of things when you're doing these kinds of studies. I think people should take parenting classes before they become parents.
Absolutely.
So one day I may write a book about this stuff, and I have somebody who is actually an expert on parenting, who we've talked about doing a book together, to help people shape the journeys that they have with their children. And she is an extraordinary parent. She and her husband, they go to nature every Saturday. No, there is no debate. They go out into the woods, or they go to the ocean, or every Saturday there is something involving nature, so that they get to stay grounded and connected and play. There are lots of very cool things that can take place. And as parents. Now they have strong intention and discipline and routine that goes with that discipline, which I would say I wasn't nearly, because of the person who I am and was at the time.
Mm,
There wasn't that same sense of routine, but there were things that I kept my mind on. That ball was on the mission statement.
mm-hmm,
So, not that it happened, but if my daughter came home at 14 with orange hair,
mm-hmm,
that wasn't a foul.
mm-hmm.
That wasn't like, because how is that going to change your becoming a loving adult? It doesn't. Like, parents get caught up in the wrong thing sometimes. They can say, you're not doing it my way, so you're going to hell in a handcart. No. And if a child does express themselves with orange hair or
Mm-hmm.
green hair or purple hair or whatever the case may be, that's probably a good thing.
I want to share something really quickly because it links to what you're saying. We get as parents, because I'm just as guilty as any other parents, raising two kids myself, getting caught in things that are not like the crucial component of what that means to raise a child, to be loving and nurturing towards them. So I love the fact that you mentioned honoring your children is so important, because I saw it in a documentary before I had children. And this one gentleman worked in the whole Quebec city to try to help youth in homes that has been in foster home and whatnot. And he
Mm-hmm.
said the biggest problem why there's so many runaway children, like kids that run away,
Mm-hmm.
it's because we don't honor who they are. And for whatever reason, sometimes the universe sends you stuff. That line stuck in my head, because I'm very much a very playful, like, yes, I am an adult, but I will always be internally a child inward. I'm always happy. I just see myself as a child, like a happy child all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So that line serves me in as my guiding principle when I am with my children, that I want to be honor who they are. And we have dreams for our children's. Like, I wanted my children to be the first hockey player that's Asian here, a female hockey player that's Asian. And then I realized none of my kids love sports. It's like, God damn it.
I dated a woman who was a frustrated tennis pro wannabe.
Mm,
And her statement was, when then we were dating long enough that she started seeing marriage and kids and things like that. And her statement was, our kids will be tennis pros.
mm,
And I was thinking, because I had heard about stage moms or stage parents, and in fact, I just recently read a story from a woman named Jeanette McCurdy, who was half of the iCarly show. She was
mm.
the blonde. I don't know if you have that show in Canada or not, but we had a show here called iCarly on
Mhm.
Nickelodeon, and my daughter watched that show. And so the blonde girl, whose name Sam, I think it was on the show.
Yes, yes.
Um, and I just read her book, which was kind of strangely titled "I'm Glad My Mom Died." It was not really a celebration of her mom's dying per se. It was more like, I'm glad my mom died so she didn't see what else was happening, type of thing. But her mom was a total stage mom,
Mm,
and it messed her up.
mm,
There were so many times in her journey when she wanted something, and her mom goes, "Oh, you're not my little girl anymore. Oh, yes, yes, I love that ice cream now." Like, even though she wanted to try a different ice cream.
yeah.
And so, and you see these kinds of things in parenting where the parents' wishes for the child don't seem to include the kids' wishes for themselves. So, you said something very profound there, and is that we part of honoring a child is discovering who they are
Yeah.
instead of telling them who they are.
Exactly. And it's a hard one. And like, I think about that, and the things that we impose our own experience, we cast it on our children. A really silly, ridiculous example I remember in college, somebody did something that kind of traumatized me. Not knowing, we'd be in like a group meeting, other fellow classmate, and I would be eating my soup, unconscious that I was making noise. doing my soup. In my head, there was no sound.
You're making me hungry, by the way. So.
Yeah, me too. And then I had like one of the classmates just very out open, like just she was irritated by the noise. I didn't hear any noise. She's like, can you stop eating your soup by making that loud noise? And it just caught me off guard because it's not my style to just say plain and open, 6 other people in front, could you just stop? It's so annoying. And I was so embarrassed. And it stayed with me, like, although I was older and understand that, okay. And I try to defend myself. I'm like, I'm not making any. She's like, yes, you are making that noise. It is so annoying. And I was like, I was looking at my teacher.
I don't even know who this woman is, and I can see the same voice that you're just using.
And then I'm looking at my teacher for like, help me. She didn't even defend me. She didn't say nothing. So I was like, maybe she's right. So that stayed with me. And so I find myself when my kid is eating soup to be overly cautious, like, and I would say the same line that girl, but not knowing, like I would tell my kid, like my son and my daughter, could you guys like sip your soup where it doesn't make that big of a sound?
Is this the same as indoor voice, outdoor voice? We have to have like indoor soup and outdoor soup? Like what's... You're only allowed to slurp when you're outside?
I'm like, oh my God, I'm doing the exact same thing. Didn't realize the impact. So I'm just saying something in our own lifetime, we have to remember when we're actually raising children that it's not something that's what we're teaching them is not something that's being passed on from a parent, from a teacher, something that you've gone through. And then I actually have to stop myself and say, like if that's the way and then my daughter's looking at me like, I'm enjoying my soup. Could you leave me alone?
Right. Well, I think this is an interesting point. It's like when we're teaching children that we're responsible for, are we making our own triggers become part of the conversation?
Exactly.
And can you take our triggers and have a healthy conversation? So I'm not, just using this particular example about slurping soup. It's like we could talk about, you could just say, it's like, without it being your trigger and not having an emotional reaction to it, you can sit down and go, let me show you something. And you can maybe slurp some soup and then you can drink soup that's quiet. And you can say, some people get bothered by the sounds of people eating. So it might be something to be aware of. When you're with the family, do what you want. But when you're with others, maybe be a little cautious not to make loud noises while you're eating. Let them store that off. Yeah. And see what happens. So because and I can't say, in our own particular case, my daughter's she might have been in kindergarten at the time. I think she was in kindergarten at the time, and they were bringing in those rolls that come with paper towels and making things out of those rolls. And they had the little short rolls that came from toilet paper. And my daughter's going to go, oh, I'll take these to school for the projects. And my wife very carefully said, because toilet paper is for wiping people's behinds, people might not want to handle this tube because they think it's connected to the germs. She got it. We didn't have to like react. Well, no, nobody's going to want that. No, don't do that. We just, so you take, again, this goes back to being patient. So one of the things that and thankfully in many ways, even though my wife and I, then wife and I had different interactions as adults, we were kind of on the same page in most cases as parents. My wife was a little bit more volatile, reactive, and sometimes was more of a yeller. Way more. I don't know if I told you offline or I told you at the beginning of this conversation, there were 3 notable moments in my life with my daughter where I lost my temper. So we'll come to that in a second. But the idea is that if you're being patient, then you take the time to explain to the child why slurping, for example, might be an issue. When you have friends over or you're visiting other people or you're out dining, slurping probably will affect somebody. So it's a good idea not to do it then. In the meantime, slurp away if that's what you want to do, but be aware. be aware that when we're with other people in any capacity, that you might not want to do that for the sake of being friendly to other people's ears.
Yeah.
So
And
you're
patient,
teaching awareness.
yeah, exactly. Patient is a big component to parenting, honestly. And I have like a huge amount of patience, but I can tell you raising children takes the patient level to to an extent that I can't grasp, honestly.
Right.
But I think that if you want to be successful with your children, there's so many different ingredients. I would say like for each family is different. You know, the family dynamic and each children's are different. They have different personality, responds differently. The way I parent my daughter is not the same the way I parent my son because they're two different people. um you know, it's easier for us to try to save energy to try to parent the same way all of your children, but it doesn't work. So what
And
works for
and that's proving a sort of a shortcut when you do that,
that's right.
which is not always patience. So what you're
Exactly.
really saying is completely true. Is patience is paramount, and extremely trying at times will, for us as human beings, will be the fact that we may feel like we're not being efficient the way we want to be, or or we're losing our time on things trying to explain things to others, or I've told you 25 times.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have to sit down for the 25th time and go, this is the impact. These are the consequences. you know,
That's it.
without it being emotional, like
Yes, and it's taking the emotion out is the hardest component for me because I'm a very emotional and I sense energy and stuff. So when I'm trying to explain or bring awareness to my children, it's really hard to. I have to practice in the mirror or practice ahead of time so that I don't become too emotional. Something that they said that might have really affected me, to just take that emotion out because it's too much for children to process depending on their level. So, the one thing that I want to share as well with children when we're raising them, the patient level, I realize a good example of this is I've been testing myself like every time they call me, like I don't know how many times I hear the word mom, 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 mom. Hey, I have to, mom. And every time that words come, I'm like, because I'm so busy trying to do everything. I'm like running, making sandwiches and then prepping for different things and going, okay, then in 5 minutes, I have to attend this meeting for business. Then and then trying to do homeworks and all that stuff. And I'm always like wired. So when I hear the word mom, it makes me want to jump and go like, what is it? And so I realized that when they do, I said, okay, just let's experiment, Ree. When you hear the word mom and you want to jump out of your skin, don't do that. Just turn over and say yes. And then inside swallow going, what is going on again? So I just say yes. And for the past week, this week, since I've been answering nicely, I surprised myself all the time because all they really wanted to say to me was, Mom, I love you. I was like, oh, I thought you were going to ask me for something, but they just simply wanted, they're thinking of me and they just wanted to tell me. And I fall into that same trap every single time. They're like, Mom, I'm like, oh my God, they're going to ask me something again. I'm like, I already have so much to do and I don't even know if I'm going to make it on time. And I'm like, yes. And I do it with a smile. I purposely try to do it with a smile. It's not always possible. And they always say, oh, I just wanted to say I love you. Can I have a hug? And then I feel so bad. I'm like, oh my God, imagine if I reacted and then because it's happened with my kid when I did react, go, yeah, what? What's going on? And my son is like, oh, forget it. No, what happened? He's like, well, I just wanted to say I love you, but forget it. I was like, now I feel horrible.
right. Yeah, no, that's, and thankfully in my case, I stuck to that mission statement of being patient.
Yes.
And I'll give you like one notable exception. Um, I had bought in an antique store this giant mirror, and when I say giant, it was like 4 feet by 8 feet with a huge flowered border that was kind of layer painted on. It was actually a stunning piece of
Okay.
material. Um, And we decided that we were going to mount it on a shelf and on the wall
Mm,
in a horizontal mode, not the long mode,
mm,
so that we could bounce light off the back of the yard into the house and
mm,
just kind of and just extend the feeling of the room.
mhm.
So I'm installing this pretty much by myself. I did have a little help lifting it up there and things
Yeah.
like that, but I'm so I'm in the process of mounting this thing, and my daughter sees that she's still in diapers at this point. She's probably 3.5 years old. She was just to let everybody know, a 3.5 year old in diapers can happen because she was 13 months old when we first became a family with her, and she's had some slower maturation things that took place along the way. Another way is she's just accelerated past most kids, but some things like getting out
Mm,
of diapers. And I felt no need to rush that because I'd rather clean up a diaper than something
mm,
else.
mhm,
So I just figured if it takes her a little longer to get out of diapers, it takes her a little longer to get out of diapers. We'll manage.
mhm.
So anyway, so she's coming to me. I can remember she has a diaper on, and she's bringing me a glass of water,
Mm.
just trying to be helpful. She said,
Yeah,
"Well, get a glass of water for Dad."
yeah.
And I'm like, "Ugh, I don't want a glass of water.
Oh.
Like
Mm.
you should have seen her eyes like this.
Oh.
And I said, and so she just put it down and she just disappeared.
Yeah.
So now, like you're talking about feeling bad, but it took a while to register because I'm in the middle of my project.
Yeah.
And after that, I'm going like, holy cow, what did I do to my daughter?
Yeah.
So, and this was the first time I had lost my temper with her.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I sat her down, and I had a conversation with her. I said, just so you know, you were not at fault for me losing my temper. You did nothing wrong. Um, I'm responsible for that thing that has happened between us, not you. And I really do appreciate the fact that you were bringing me a glass of water. I just, at the time, I was in my head in a different place and thinking only about the project and not paying attention to our relationship.
Mm.
And I had this intellectual conversation with a 3.5 year old because I wanted her to know that I did love her, and I had this, I had to do damage control here.
Mhm.
Let me say I got to do damage control here because it was a really big learning experience for me, and I think that those kinds of conversations are the reasons why my daughter will tell me stuff that she won't tell her mom, because her mom was more likely to yell and more likely to pass the buck for why she was yelling. Like, if you didn't do that, I wouldn't have yelled at you. Like, and I'm thinking, if there's something to yell at somebody about, that's a learning opportunity, not a yelling opportunity. So I would spend my time, and my wife caught on to that, so she did it more and more. So she realized that when we're teaching my daughter Mackenzie about the consequences of whatever it was that might have been, like, we don't play in traffic. Why? Because, not that she was, but I'm just using that as an extreme example. So we never had to have a conversation with her about playing in traffic because we kind of already had explained it to her. We don't go rushing out into the street. And we created a conscious kid
Yeah.
in the process. I learned to be conscious by teaching my daughter to be conscious. So I will say, you had said something earlier about parenting, adopting a little girl and changing her life. But I have to say is that she changed my life.
Mm. Mhm.
Becoming a family was good for all of us. It wasn't about us sacrificing for the greater of this little girl, or we became a family. We became a relationship. We learned from each other.
Yeah.
We did all those things, and then the various things that we did for bonding along the way.
Mhm.
That would be to
Yeah,
make it.
which we will discuss because I think it's beautiful. I want to touch base on what you just said about um your kid, like, how you make up for the mistakes that we sometimes as human being, there's no perfect parents, so we will scream and we will lose our patience. And I want to mention for female, and I don't want to have any bias, but I'm talking for myself. I'm a
Mhm.
yeller. And the reason why I'm a yeller, and it's not to blame other people, there are things that we pick up as we grow up. The reason why I'm a yeller is because my mother is a yeller.
Well, that goes back to what I was saying before.
Yes,
Parenting is
exactly.
cyclical.
Exactly. And so this is all I've learned from my mom. And I think it's more men, you guys are able to talk, and some may be frustrated, have anger in some other way, but usually men are able to talk and rationalize with kids a little bit better. For us female, okay, I don't want to generalize. So for me, female, I am a yeller. So when I get stressed, I yell. That's my mechanism. That's how I process stress. And so thank you for that, because you made something click in my head, because I didn't understand why my daughter found the yelling to be something that is difficult for her. My daughter is an extremely sensitive baby, very intuitive, very receptive.
She's not a baby anymore.
No, she's not. She's 11, but she'll always be a little baby, and like my little baby, the two. Um, and I find it, you gave me an aha moment when you said the yelling and how that could possibly affect. I'm thinking in my head, because maybe I'm too much in my skin. I didn't put myself in my daughter's shoe, in the sense that yelling can have an impact on children, and much more difficult, because I just this week I yelled at her, not knowing, and I'm bad, and I'm working, and my objective is to try to yell less. Like when I feel the urge, I'm like, no, find other alternative instead of yelling. And if you need to distract yourself, if you need room to go outside and breathe, if you need to just put on some music, cut out the noise with the children so I can hear my own thoughts. So I'm doing that. I'm becoming more conscious, and I practice, like when it's about to come out, I count to 5, and then it calm down, and then I don't need to yell anymore. But I didn't realize how much of an impact the yelling can do on a kid. Because the other day, I have my brand new bike. I don't like to have scratches on my bicycle, like and so I lent it to her because she didn't have a bike, and all her brother and all the other kids had a bike. So she said, "Could I borrow your bike?" I said, "Sure," and I helped her put the seat down, and she's able to ride it. And so she fell with the bike on it, and I practiced, instead of saying, "Oh, you ruined my bike," I practice asking with my children, learning, "Are you okay?" first, because they've already come and expressed to me, it seems like you care more about your objects than caring about me, asking how I'm doing when I'm falling, instead of how's the bike. So I make a conscious effort and go, "Baby, are you okay? Like, are you okay?" And then asking about the bike after it, just changing the order. And then when we came home, she said, "Mom, when I fell with the bike, I think I landed on poop. So you might have some poop stain on your bicycle." So I said, "Okay, well, it's a brand new bike, honey. Would you mind cleaning off you know, the thing?" I just arrived home. So I wasn't gonna clean some poop and stuff. I figure it's a brand new bike. I'm nice enough to lend her the bike. She's 11. She can clean off whatever, and then I'll help her after. And she didn't feel like cleaning the poop. So so she doesn't answer. I'm like, so, and then I went into, we got in, I can't remember what the line was. We went into a little bit of a heated discussion, and I said, like, mommy gave you the bicycle for a reason. If you're going to be taking somebody's bike and they were nice enough to give it to you, I think it's only courteous for you to clean up the dirt that's, was there, because you're responsible for it. And then she stopped talking to me.
But you made a fair point. So, and the reason why she probably reacted the way she did is because she's used to you cleaning up after her.
Yes.
And now she's disappointed that you're not doing that.
Yes, and
Like
that's a new
this,
thing.
and you were asking something that was fair and also guiding her to being an adult.
Yeah.
So everything
And
you
she
did
did.
was
She,
everything you did was right, and then she, for all intents and purposes, she kind of pulled a temper tantrum.
but she was really good in expressing after because and then I said, did I say something wrong? Why are you not responding to me? And I'm so proud of her because I'm proud of my kids. I love my kid to death. And I think one thing that's very important that I want to pass on as a message to parents, because it's hard raising kids. You never know how it pans out. You always cross your fingers and your toes that every effort will yield its result in some way. But I think one good one that really helps me, that I'm convinced and I convince in my heart, is I tell myself, these children, no matter how much mistake that I will make, I will do my very best to not make as many mistakes, but I will make a tremendous amount of mistake. But it's to have the core belief that these two beautiful baby will turn out to be good citizen, and I believe in them. I believe they were meant to be on this earth. However it pans out, they'll be good people. And so I think it's that undying belief that when I look at the present moment and I'm realizing I'm screwing this up really badly, and then it's just have that belief it's okay, we like it, correct, and keep at it. And I think that belief really drives the core of seeing the big picture. But coming back to my daughter, when I asked her why she stopped talking to me, did I say something wrong? And then she was brave enough, because she had tears in her eyes, and it breaks my heart when my daughter starts tearing up because she's this a super sensitive baby. So she comes over. I said, could you please come over? And I'm not going to repeat myself because I'm practicing not to repeat myself 100 times. Before, I have no problem repeating myself 100. Could you please come and talk to mommy? So she dragged her feet, but I didn't say anything, and I was patient. I wait till she comes, and then she finally came, and she had tears in her eyes, and I said, I'm so sorry. I don't know, something of what I said really hurt you badly, and for that I'm extremely sorry, because that is not the intention or the purpose of our discussion. So could you please tell me why you are crying so that I can do it differently or word my word differently? And she expressed to me the reason why she's mad at me wasn't because of the fact that she needs to clean off the poop on the bicycle, is the fact that I raised my voice at her to say she felt like that I didn't care about her. She said, how did she say it? She said, it really hurt me when you raised your voice and said that my God, my memory. She said that you raised your voice and you said, oh, it's all your fault. That's all she remembered, even though that's not what I meant. She said, you said it is all your fault. You fell off the bicycle, then therefore you were responsible. Like she interpret. So that's
Right.
what I meant, but she had a different interpretation, and that's what stuck in her head. So then I thank her for expressing that. I said, okay, this is what I understand, that that's how you perceived it, and that really hurt you, and that you felt like I didn't care for you, but that's not what mommy meant. Mommy meant this, and I explained it to her calmly. Do you understand that that is not mommy's intention? And I'm so sorry that I made you cry. And then she was better. She was content with the explanation, and then she took the paper towel, put some soap, and went to clean the poop.
Well, you just brought up something, by the way, which I think every parent should have this conversation with their children. And there's a difference between responsibility and guilt or fault. Because my daughter even went through this thing. Is says, you're responsible. We would tell her, you're responsible for something that happened. And she goes, I am not responsible, because she was connecting the word responsible for guilt.
Yeah.
We're saying, no.
Exactly. Yeah.
But you were in the situation. So you're responsible for your reaction. You're responsible for outcomes. There are consequences even being in the room for situations that maybe are even out of your control. So you're not at fault for how things came down, but you are responsible for what you're going to do with that thing that happens. And that's an extraordinary conversation to have with kids, because it's an adult thing to learn, but they can learn it as kids. And so many, you think about how many adults out there are always blaming everything else on everybody, on everything, or blaming stuff that's happening in their lives on everybody else and everything that's happening. And that never changes, because until you take ownership, nothing can change. And that is an adult thing that they could already have by the time they become adults and live their lives in much happier ways, because they know that they are responsible for the response. They don't have to be responsible for what created the response, but they are responsible for the response. And I think, you could even play back that conversation, maybe not at the dinner table, but play back that conversation with both kids so that they hear the story about the difference between fault and responsibility.
That's true. I will discuss that, because it's true that when they hear the word responsibility, it means guilt. It's often linked to guilt. You're right. But that's not what we meant to say. So definitely I will have that conversation with the children. The other thing I want to mention as well was, it's so important. So crucial. Yes. The other thing I want to mention, know your own self trigger. As a parent, there are certain things that your children will create a trigger, and it has nothing to do with your children. It's a trigger of your own past, your relationship with your parents, teachers, anybody. In a workplace, somebody said a comment, you went to the store. Like, I remember one of my clients, one of her roommates said that she was so self-centered, and then for the rest of her life, she assumed everything that she's done is never good enough because she must be self-centered, or she's so conscious of like trying to not make everything about her that she neglects her own need, which is not better. So be aware of your own trigger as children, because I look at my daughter and my son. I have a closer connection naturally with my son because we share a similar value. Whereas with my daughter, for example, you said taking responsibility. I was a child that took responsibility at a very young age, that understood that concept innately, easily, which is something that my son also understands. So we have this easy bond, and he tells the truth. So the common interest that we share is he's honest, he's sensitive, he can keep a secret, and he takes responsibility for his action. He doesn't lie. So I connect to my son easily like that. Whereas with my daughter, it's a little bit more difficult. It takes her longer before she wants to share. She has to get older to understand the concept of sharing. Lying is another big struggle for my daughter. Not knowing, little white lie, like if I can get away with little white lie, why can I not lie about something else? So that's something I have to teach. And then the other one is not taking responsibility for, like, if you did something, say you did it, and that's how I was. So here I am finding myself that when she doesn't, like, for example, they go to the bathroom and they didn't flush. And it's not a big deal. I would try to teach. Yeah.
Oh, I should be in your household for a few weeks. I could be the nanny, or what's that, super nanny, whatever that show was that was on TV a few years ago. But it's like, so your son is getting a different benefit than your daughter, because your daughter is remembering more yelling than your son's hearing. And so the reason why she's telling these little white lies, like, I didn't do that, that wasn't me, or whatever the case may be, is because she's just tired of the yelling. This is where patience comes in really big time, because if you were patient all the time and never yelled, then your daughter would go, oh, I just forgot to flush, and she would take care of it. So, or remember better to do it next time. I also wanted to stress very much the difference between responsibility for self and responsibility for others. And this is where children can confuse things, because when we tell them they're responsible and we don't be clear about this, then they can say, well, I'm also responsible for what my mom does or my dad does, or I'm responsible for the divorce, or I'm responsible for their argument.
Yeah.
Or whatever the case may be. So no, no, no. Just because things happen in the universe doesn't mean you're responsible. It's more like what happens for you, to you, what happens inside of your own thing. It's your life that you're responsible for, not others. And that's a very challenging thing for children. Children, you just pointed something else, that your daughter heard, I'm guilty, when you just means, you know, you need to own the situation so that you make be as whole as you can for the person you borrowed something from. Even if it wasn't your fault that the bike got that on there.
Yeah.
You were still, you can't just return it and say, well, I had an accident, no big deal, you know, like, so you still have to take care of it. Like if I borrow a car and I have an accident, I shouldn't be making my friend pay for the deductible and the insurance increase and the things like that. Even if they have, assuming they have insurance, I should be at least stepping up and going, I'll take care of the deductible. I'll take care of the thing, you know, whatever the case may be. And if I'm borrowing a car, hopefully my insurance takes over anyway, so they don't have to have the any blemishes on their record at all. So, you know, so that's what we mean by ownership. You know, even though I didn't cause the accident, I had an accident, and I'm still responsible for making sure my friend gets a car that's whole. If they need a rental car and their insurance doesn't take care of it, I should be taking care of that. You know, I should be making sure that they were doing me a favor, and what happens on my watch inside that favor should not be affecting their lives. On the flip side, I'm not responsible for all the other drivers in the world that have an accident. So, you know, that's what we're talking about, the word responsibility. So, so great conversations, like the idea, this is where patience pays off big time. Because if we do have that elevated pitch in our voice where we're like, it's because yelling is kind of a judgment. And judgment is a huge challenge inside of parenting. As soon as we put judgment into the equation, then we are reframing that child's ability to learn from the experience. Because judgment, nobody wants to be judged. No. Nobody wants to be judged. So they're going to contract, they're going to resist. The opportunity for learning changes radically when they're in that state. So as a parent, although you're learning, right? But as a parent, you realize that yelling does not help at all. It never helps, you know, unless it's an emergency, a real emergency, like get out of the street, you know, like car coming, you know, like then you got to yell. But you do not want to yell. If you caught them in the street, you have to say, look, this has got me scared. Yeah. You can tell them, honestly, I'm scared. You don't have to yell at them because I'm scared. Because cars come, sometimes you don't hear them coming in time. And sometimes they can't see you. And I would be scared to lose you. I would be scared to have to be there for you while you were in pain if you didn't get killed by a car. You know, those kinds of things. You know, so, you know, and your fear may not be the only thing is that you don't need to be in pain and you have a full life ahead of you. Let's keep you going on that trajectory. So don't play in the street, you know, like you have get them to understand in the conversations, because you're right. Our emotions can be triggers, and our triggers can result in volatile, non-helpful communication. And that's what I meant by being patient. To truly honor your child, you must be patient, like 100% of the time. Yeah. And then the other thing is if they've learned how to use your impatience, that means they can push your buttons.
Exactly. And I think like the mention about the patient part is it could actually yield in the long term, like maybe on the short term, it seems like inefficient. But as a long term, the patient pays off much more, because I realized something. And thank you for that, because it didn't click on me. Like the yelling doesn't serve any purpose at all. I thought it served a purpose, but it really doesn't serve any purpose when I look at the overall general things. So the only thing that I have to work on is my trigger, like that is my resorting mechanism. But you can really change your mechanism once you understand. Now I'm able to change because I understand it and then I'll just have to replace, like, in order to change a behavior, you need to replace it by a new behavior. So I know what to change when
Yeah.
I get into the wanting to scream, I'll replace with something else. So thank you.
Yep. So anytime you want to yell, take a deep breath.
Yeah.
Don't even grit your
Remember
teeth.
this conversation.
Take a deep breath and just go, oh, something just happened for me, kids. I want you to learn about.
Yeah, that's it.
I had a triggering moment and I wanted to yell, but I wanted to tell you why I wanted to yell. And that way they have a learning experience with you and they go through this whole thing. So that one of the things, now your kids are older, so it might not be as challenging, but sometimes when kids are younger, when you're on the phone,
Yeah.
and that's when the kids are going, mommy, 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 and you're on the phone. Like, and maybe it's work, or maybe you're guiding a friend through a crisis or whatever the case may be. And they're going, mommy, 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 or daddy, daddy, daddy.
Yeah.
And at a very early age, I had a conversation with my daughter and I said, when mom and dad are on the phone, they may be working on something to make the world a better place for all of us. And so it'd be helpful if you would find a way to just self-entertain or hold your thoughts or questions until we're off the phone. And that conversation worked really nicely. My daughter only came to me when I was on the phone when there was something urgent. Like, we would tell her, if the house is on fire, we need to know. That's when you interrupt everything that's going on. If you see smoke or something's not right, that's when interruption makes perfect sense. But if daddy's on the phone, and especially if he's making money so that we can all go to the movies and have sometimes dinner out and all the fun things we do, it might make sense to let daddy have that conversation without interruption. Yeah. And she registered that. Because we explained to her what she could get, what the benefits were to the family. And we also said, but if you start interrupting and there's no real good, there's no urgent cause for interruption, and so we didn't say no good. We didn't want to be, if there's no urgent cause for interruption, it could affect the ability for dad to make money or whatever else he's doing, which is what helps make this family go well. Now, she grasped that. Rather than my yelling at her, I'm on the phone.
Yeah.
We had the pre-conversation about what it means to be on the phone. And there were times when my daughter came to me when I was on the phone with good evaluation that, Dad, there's water on the floor in the basement. And I would say, can I call you back? Yeah. And then I would go down and take care of that. And then thank you for your very attentive. Yeah. And
you have to encourage them. Yeah. But I think also it's good in the sense that I do cleaning with my children, and they don't particularly like to do cleaning. And who blames them? Because I
don't like it.
Who honestly like it? I mean, some people may.
I know some people do. Some people do.
I know.
My ex-wife, scouring, cleaning, sterilizing, But for me, that was always like I'll do it next month.
Yeah, it's same for me too. So I'm not judging those who like it. And so I realized that before, what I used to do, I would be on the stairs, screaming down to the basement, going, guys, clean up your room. And then scream some more, and then come downstairs, find out nothing is done. So I'm like, okay, my method is not working. And when we talk about being patient, so what I do now, after if I'm really in a rush and I can't, and so I actually tell them, not screaming, but just tell them a louder voice if they can pick up their room. And if I see that they're not moving or not hearing anything, so instead of doing more screaming like the next 10 times, what I do is practicing patient, I'll go downstairs. I might not have a lot of time, but I realized that this has saved me a lot of time in the long run. I go downstairs and I say, I would really like for this to be picked up. I point out what the different items, what that is, because my son, especially my daughter, is very good at cleaning. It comes to her natural. She just doesn't like it, but it comes to her natural. Whereas my son, he's clueless like me. I'm like, what is cleaning? What am I picking up? Like, his brain doesn't see there's a shirt on the floor. There's a socks in the corner. He don't see the computer. He don't see juice boxes anywhere. So I don't judge him. So I just stand next to him and point, and he would pick it up. And then we would finish all of it. And that took me, what, 10 minutes, then instead of 30 minutes of back and forth screaming and yelling and being frustrated. And by the time they get up, I am no longer processing. I am just infuriated. And here they are, they want to cuddle and they want to tell me how much they love me. It just ruined the whole evening. Because why? Because I burn my energy out. And so I realize sometimes, even though when we're really busy, it's important when possible, because I know it's not always possible. When possible, it's important to just be next to them. Like children needs you to be next to them, to show them, or when you see they're struggling, like my daughter struggled with doing her bed. She doesn't particularly like that. So I would offer to say, okay, would you like me to help you with doing the bed? And then now they're motivated. It's just they want you with them. It's almost like they want you to play with them while they're doing these chores.
I think you're hitting on something here that's probably, there are two elements in our journeys that are extremely important. One is relationships. Not any challenge for you to understand that, for sure. And the next thing is to understand our relationship with time.
Yeah.
So you think about, sometimes when you lose your patience, it's because you don't have, quote, the time.
Yeah.
Because you have this meeting to get to, or you have this
project to finish,
something to do, and it requires some of your time.
Mm-hmm.
So I have lots of thoughts on this, if you want me to put this on the table, in terms of like, if the idea is that you can't give them the time now to have a quality conversation with them, or for that matter, even share time with them doing the cleaning, it's like, then don't do it now. It's like, because all of a sudden we have in our mind, we have a story in our mind, the cleaning's got to be, I said something, it's got to be done now.
Yeah.
And because I said so, and that's the story. And the part of the reason why we have that is this, I should only have to say it once, it should just get done, and I can then take this out of my time management challenge because it's done. And I, at one level, I would agree with that, is that we should not have to revisit things because that costs more time.
Yeah.
So when you get right down to it, though, is when it comes, especially when a relationship with children, it comes down to how do we get more time as a family, or how do we get more time as parents or children, time with children? How do we get more of that time together? That's because we pitch in and do these things together, and we do different contributions. Perhaps I go out and make the money, but I'm going to ask you, and the 11-year-old could possibly start making dinner if she hasn't already been so, because the 11-year-old has the ability to learn these things. And for that matter, my daughter was cooking when she was 7. Wow. So, so you can teach children to do these things and say, this is what allows us to have more quality time together when we all pitch in and do this. So if you, and maybe you have duty to do the bathroom this week, and maybe you have duty to do kitchen this week, and somebody takes the garbage out, so that while mom makes the money and does these other things to help make our household function, then we get more time together. And the children will not only buy into that, they understand that intrinsically. So a lot of these conversations have to do with the fact that when we're feeling rushed, we now feel like everybody else needs to rush. And that actually impedes quality of relationships, because now we're imposing time constraints on the relationship, as opposed to letting relationship responsibilities impose on the time.
That's a very important point, Brian. I'm glad you brought that up, because there are times when I actually have to look and take like a step back and go, do I even have time to do what I want them to do? And we're going to go into a fight mode. They're going to be unhappy. I'm going to be unhappy. I'm going to be stressed being at a meeting, bad energy vibe all around. So I'm like, I look at it and I'm like, okay, it doesn't need to be done now. Just because I tell myself the story doesn't mean that it has to unfold that way. Maybe there's a better timing for this when I have. So choosing the right timing is so crucial for it. It doesn't have to be now. And we try to cram so much in there and then wondering why it
Well, one of the challenges I had, and this is relationships in general, by the way, not just kids, but it's kids especially, but
Yeah.
because kids, time with kids is really essential. But
Yeah.
but this affects relationships in general. Like I can't tell you how many arguments I had in my marriage when my wife would say, "I would like you to do this," and in her mind, that means it's as good as done. And when it wasn't done, when she came back from whatever she was doing, she was now starting to stew inside, and eventually became an explosion or something. And what was happening down the road. And I couldn't understand why you couldn't just tell me what you wanted done. And then the other thing is telling somebody how to do something. That's you tell them what you want done. If they agree to do it, it's got to be done.
Mm-hmm.
Let them do it, and
Yeah.
on their time, their way.
Yeah.
And this is true for kids too. So let them do it their time, their way. And if you need to improve their way, you tell them why in
Mhm.
an intellectual, calm, discussion.
Yeah.
And these are very, very important things. And by the way, guys, when you tell them to do something, there's a 2-year window to get it done. Just so you know, it's automatic.
Oh, well, at least I've been blessed with that. He's not, my boyfriend is pretty good at that. It takes some patience sometimes. But other than that, I would say 85%, it's really, he's like at another different level. So that I'm very grateful for
Right.
that.
Well, anyway, I was joking, of course, but but this is true in all relationships, and especially with kids. And in fact, patience with kids, very important, but patience overall, very
Yeah.
important,
Yeah.
because there is other than life and death matters, yelling rarely has any positive outcome.
It's true. And I didn't realize that the yelling, there is a judgment, because I know I'm not a judgmental person. So I don't equate yelling to judgment. But you hit the nail on the head, because the way my daughter explained, the yelling is a judgment to her.
Mhm.
And then it's a really tricky one too, because she would make the remark like, I am so proud of her for being able to express what bothered her, because it gives me a roadmap to correcting course, she would tell me, I said, because she did say, okay, she said to me, I feel like you love my brother more than you love me. Okay. Well, first of all, that was implanted by my ex in her head when she was a young kid. I don't know why he said that. So that really infuriated me. And then I just had to let that go. And now I'm just dealing with my daughter. Now it's her perception, even though it's not reality. I have to deal with her perception because it is her reality. And then I explain it to her. I think every kid's, what they're trying to tell you is that they want to be special in your eyes. And then the fact that I made it clear to my daughter that she'll always be special in my eyes, in her way, because I always tell them I have 2 kids. I have 1 girl, 1 boy. I love them just as equally, because I only have one girl. There's no other girl to compete. And so that 1 girl is super special, and that 1 boy is super special to me. And so you guys have a special place in my heart. Nobody will ever compete. They just want to know, will there always be special in your heart? And the fact that I explained that to my daughter and explain how she come to be, how it took me 3 years to get pregnant, to wait for her to come on this earth, and how much joy she's brought to my life and my ex-husband at the time. So and then she felt, okay, I am special to my mom. She loves my brother differently, but I'm I make it for her because it's so crucial. Whereas my son, yes, he needs to be loved, but he doesn't need that attention that my daughters seek. And so
It's kind of a truism, though, that the child that is easier appears to be more loved.
yes.
And that's and there's neither child will be equally easy.
Yes.
So and part of this can come from you have, there are maybe attributes in your son, and you might have even shared this with me. There's some attributes in your son that are very much like you. So that's what makes it seem easier, maybe because you can identify and even communicate and bond with him in ways that may be more efficient because you understand him. And your daughter may be more foreign to you, and you need to. And so the interesting thing is that in many ways, there's a possibility that she's right. That she sees you love your son more than her, because she gets more of the yelling, she gets more of the corrections, she gets more of the other, because you don't know her as well as you know your son because of some of these differentiations. So she needs extra time.
Yep.
And your son probably won't even care.
Nope.
So she needs extra time and extra patient time.
Yep.
Like she needs bonding time. She needs, and this probably gets us to the subject of bonding. And it's like she will mature and grow well with that, because that changes the equation of the story in her head, that mommy loves R better than she does me.
Yeah.
I don't know his full name, so I just know the letter R.
Ryan.
So she loves R better than she does me, and that's not a voice you want your kid carrying with her, because that touches on self-worth. It touches on valuation. It touches on concepts of love and things like that. And you can't tell a child about unconditional love. You have to show it to them.
Yeah.
But
I do want to be able to say there is a distinction between those two. I think at some level, the person is responsible. And I'm not saying for my kid here, because I see that in my own relationship with my sibling, whereas my brother, I was the easy child, same value to my dad and my mom. So I was the favorite in the family for a long time, and not because I wanted to be the favorite. I just understand what my parent needed. I never thought about me. I just thought about, okay, my parents sacrificed to the genocide. They come to a new country, gave all the money of their saving just to bring us to a better country for opportunity. So I always thought, what can I do to make their difficult life easier? That mean I have to get good grades at school. That mean I have to give them as least problem as possible. That mean contributing around the house. That mean not asking too much of my parents. So I made sure that their life that was already difficult, made it as minimally as less difficult as much as I can. So when you're not a difficult child and I was always very honest, I'm respectful of the time when they say you go out, you come back at a certain time, what I say is always honest. So there's a credibility, there's a trust level.
So tell me about this without going into long details. Tell me a little bit about, does your brother have a more troubled relationship with your parents?
Yeah, still is. It's
okay. So you can see the truth.
Yeah.
And if you are the one who's the easier child, then favoritism, which appears like more love, can fall into place. And then when you arrive into adulthood, and you're now clearly at least 22 years old, so so your brother is still carrying the weight of those feelings, that he wasn't as loved, and he wasn't appreciated as much, and he probably got yelled at even more, and all these other things. And I'm not suggesting that he can't turn that around with the right coaching and things like that. He could have an extraordinary life. The challenge being that right now, it sounds like he's still carrying all that weight on him. So as your parent in your particular scenario, you can't fix your brother per se. I mean, if you want to send him my way, I'll work with him. But but the idea is that you can't now that you're aware, you can't be like, that's just the way it's going to go, and let your daughter arrive in adulthood like your brother.
No. Yeah.
So it's important that you create that quality bonding time, that may be even in excess of what you give letter R. Yeah.
Or
So,
being my son. Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you fully because I don't want it to repeat like a pattern. But I also want to teach my daughter that there is a difference in perception at some level because my sister gone through the same similar thing where my the brother that follows me and then my younger sister being the youngest, she did express to me we have a very loving relationship together with my sister, and she expressed to me like she was feeling a little bit jealous that my parents showed up, everything they showed up for me for all these different things, and then when she had her graduation or she had some kind of an event, they didn't even bother to show up because what happened, when you're a parent, you show up for the first kid all the time because everything is first, right? So
mhm.
then the rest kind of like, ugh. And so that did have an
And
impact.
by the way, that's a form of patience.
Yes.
Oh, I've already done this for the first kid or the first two kids, and I got to do this for the third. Yes, that's part of patience.
Exactly. And so she suffered from that. And so she was able to express to me, and they had like a conflicting relationship, not to get to drag this too long, because we have to pull it in. So
Oh
she
no, we could just keep talking all day.
you and I can keep talking all day long, right? And so she felt like that she wasn't as important to my parents as I was to them. And although she knew and she saw the good quality in me and why, uh she had a very conflicting relationship with my parent, because she was like ready to fight, whereas me, I don't fight with my parent. I listen to them first and I'm asking, what are they really saying, what do they need, and then I tune in, and I'm very much of a big global picture. I can listen to what people are saying and I can self reflect and then put my needs down and go, what do they really want and how do we both get win-win? So I was always very good at that. So my sister had the same jealousy like my brother did, but there is two difference. I realized there is a difference because each person is responsible for themselves. So she was jealous of me. My brother was jealous of me growing up older. And then we came to a certain age where we were more mature and she was able to ask me the question. And she said to me, how come you always get all of the yeses from mom and dad? How come they always show up to your various event? How come they don't come to my thing that is important to me? How come you have nice conversation with mom and dad and me it's often conflictual? So I explained to my sister, would you like some pointer? Do you want me to tell you what I observe? Not that I'm right. And I go, this is what I noticed with my sister. And I go, you understand that mom and dad loves us all the same, but different. And I can't say that I would be lying if I said that as a parent, we didn't at some period or another have a favorite in there. I'd be lying because there is moments and times where one of them are a little bit easier or you connect with them more. But I know for sure for myself that I love my children equally. And I look at my parents, they love all of the children. They're all different, but they still love them all the same. They connect differently with each single one. We were four in the family. And then I gave out the pointer to my sister. I go, when you are interacting with dad, you are quick to fight with him. You're quick to want to be right. You didn't hear what he said to you yet. You didn't even give him a chance to talk and finish. This is who dad's is. So I described the pathway of what dad is. And then when you're talking to dad, don't be fast. I know you know the answer to it, but don't be fast to give him an answer. Don't be so fast to fight him on something. Let him finish his sentence, then calmly interject and share your opinion and wait. You got to be aware, like, this is very feisty and she wants to react. So I go, this create friction with you and dad. Whereas if you stay calm and he finishes sentence, he know that now my daughter just listened to what I said. And then he's very open, even if they're opposing view, very open to hearing you out. I said, give it a try. And it's not because dad prefers me more or prefers, it's because you guys don't know how to talk to each other. And then I said, look at the situation. Do I ever ask more of in the family? Do I ask so many things of mom and dad compared to you guys? And she said, no. I go, yeah, I don't ask a lot. I only ask when it's important to me. Like, let's say I want to go to the movie with my friends. Before asking for a request, 3 weeks before or 4 weeks before, I do everything to put into the piggy bank of positive behavior so that when the day comes when I have to ask a favor of mom and dad, the likelihood of them saying yes, it's almost a no-brainer because I built up all of these good reward to prove to them that I am deserving of this. Instead, for you guys, you are reactive. You want something, you expect a yes right away, but you don't work towards building for a yes. This is what I do. And I go, and then she started observing. I said, I do the cleaning, I cook, I study, I keep my grade up. When I have a curfew, I come back. I'm always, and I said, but you guys, you want something, it's all about you now. And then you get a no, and you're like, why are they saying no? But you notice I built up my stuff to get a yes. I worked for every yes, and I don't even ask a lot of yes. I only ask a few. And so she realized that. And then her relationship with my dad changed as she said, okay, she said, you know what, sis, you seem to nail something with mom and dad. My approach is not working. How about I give it a try the way you suggested? And surprisingly, she has the most out of the two, her and my dad. Like, I was very close to my dad, but her and my dad became the closest of those two because she modified her approach. And she realized later that we have to be responsible for our own action instead of saying it's my sister's fault. She took all of the space, the glory with mom and dad. She took responsibility for herself, what she was responsible in relation at that relationship and how to make it better. And instead of being envious of me and resenting me, she turned that into something positive. That's why we became so close, and we always say honest things to each other.
Well, it's like a beautiful narrative for actually a form of patience to begin with, and other things that take place. But there are some thoughts that came up for me in this whole thing. Is that you had talked about you love your children equally, yet it's not unusual that you'll have favorites along the way. And so here's the challenge: you love your children equally because of unconditional love. Like regardless of how easy or challenging a child is you have unconditional love for both of them, especially as a biological mother. I think there are certain kinds of things that take place during gestation and other things that create bonds of a certain nature that just makes it so that they could be the most vile children and you would still love them. But then there are the conditional aspects of things that we throw, and it's like you have the easier child, so it sort of makes it natural for them to be a favorite. That makes it seem like love is conditional, because then there's what you have as for a child, which can be unconditional, still can be perceived by the child as conditional, because now you have unconditional love for your daughter and son equally, and then the child that's easier, which in some ways you were, ends up getting more yeses and other things like that. And so now it looks like there are conditional factors for me to get that love and also to get a yes, which feels like love, and things like that. So, the inside of this is at some place along the way, and as children, it's much more challenging to do this because we still can't be completely an adult, and therefore we don't have 100% responsibility. We have parental supervision and support to add to the responsibility. Is that your daughter's perception that she's not as loved isn't about the unconditional love. She might even know that she's unconditionally loved the same, but the conditional aspects of relationships and love are what she's sensing. Is there anything in that you and your daughter could do that's just the two of you?
We do. So I do realize something with my daughter that doesn't bother my son is that she needs more. nurturing child. She needs more of that. So I give her, and she tells it to me all the time because we do girls night out, or
But what does that look like? I mean, when you're doing that?
we go shopping because she loves shopping. I hate shopping, but she loves shopping, so I take her shopping. Or we'll just go to the store, walk hand in hand, and I just tell her how much I'm so proud of her and things, and just hold her.
Does she have any other passions besides shopping? Like, does she like to dance? Does she like to?
Drawing. So what I do is sometimes she'll get into arts and crafts stuff, and then so I would just sit next to her and then take interest in what she's drawing. She's going to become some kind of an artist of something. She's very, very creative. So she cut her own hair. Like, she wanted to go short. I don't know, it's the new style. Like, she doesn't like long hair anymore, so she chopped her whole hair off to get it really short like a boy, and she did an amazing job on her hair. And I told her, like, I came back from Brazil, and so my boyfriend was sweet enough and told me, like, look, she like, she cut her own hair. And I go, I don't really know the big difference, and it looks really good. So he was sweet enough to give me a heads up so I wouldn't be shocked when I came back from Brazil and go, why did you go? What happened to your hair? So the first thing I said to her was, wow, that looks really beautiful. She really did a great job. And I tell her all the time about how I was impressed about the haircut. Like, who would think a little kid would know how to cut their own hair? But she did a great job and it looks really good. So I keep telling her all the time. And the one thing I really think that is honest, I tell my daughter, because I see my daughter, she's like a beautiful flower that gets prettier with age, like that's how I see my daughter. So I tell her almost every morning during the day and stuff, I just look at her and I just say, I can't believe that you're my daughter. Like, you just get more and more beautiful with age as every day progress. Like the day comes, and she's like, oh, mom, please.
Yeah, it was interesting. Is like my daughter is a stunning looking
Mm-hmm.
girl,
Mm-hmm.
and I wanted to draw attention to core and not outside appearance. So maybe at detriment, I've never told her how beautiful she is external. I've always told her how beautiful she is as a person.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and she is an amazing energy, an amazing, kind, considerate, way more aware than me, way more wise than me type of individual.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to say that that's part of the process of making sure in my case, we energize the core of who she is.
Yeah.
Because that's something she can take with her through her whole life. Our looks change, things can happen, accidents, age, whatever the case may be. So, so the reason why I was asking is, what activities can you do with her? Like, if she's doing artwork and you're sitting with her, why don't you do artwork? Just maybe not as
I
nice.
do artwork with her. I help her color stuff. That's the things that we bond together. We used to. I played soccer. She got to play in soccer, so I would spend time showing her soccer move, or bonding in that way. But I realized it doesn't have to be so complicated to make kids understand that you love them. Is one, I have to definitely stop with the yelling. That's already going to make a huge difference.
Right.
Which I've gotten much better at it. And two is just seeing the moment, being present, when she wants to come and cuddle, or when she just wants to show me something on her tablet, once she wants to put on a song and we rock to it. It's really in those little simple moments is to get so not caught up with the machine of the everyday and just
it's the best way to say it.
Yeah.
Just stay out of that. Be present. Stay out of the machine of life.
That's right.
Especially at home.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to eat. Somebody has to cook. But yeah, you guys could have that conversation as a family, like who's going to do what this week.
Yeah.
To make sure that we can have more time as a family together and not be separated from each other because of mom having to do all the chores or whatever the case may be. Mm-hmm. So I love that idea of that you're bonding with her. And what's the activity you do with Ryan that allows you to bond?
That Ram,
Ram, I'm sorry. I
it's
heard
okay.
Ryan.
No, it's okay. It's Ram. So he's a little boy. What do I do with my little boy? See, it's easier to find activity for a little girl. Just find it's really harder for a boy. Oh, yes. So we just found one now. So what I do with my little boy, he's a little engineer. I don't know, he's gonna build something, this kid. He just invents stuff like, oh, like an arrow. He's like lazy. He can does contraptions of some kind, and so when he does these things, I remember to be conscious to take a moment and just explore his invention and go, oh, tell me more about this invention. What does it do? What does it serve? And then he would be proud and he showed it to me. And the other thing is going biking with him. So
Ah,
uh,
good.
yeah, the other day I wanted to do my workout, so I started going in the basement, starting to do the workout, and he's knocking on the window in the bathroom downstairs, and then he has his bike, and he said, "I'm gonna go biking. Can you ask my sister to come and play with me outside? Because he's a nature dude. My daughter less, so can you tell her to come and bike?" And I said, "No, she doesn't want. She's not even awake yet, honey. Like it was like 7:30 in the morning." I said, "You're going biking?" He said, "Yeah." So you don't have anybody to go with you? She's like, "No, like I want my sister to come." I said, "Well, would you like it if I go biking with you? Like I might not be able to spend like a lot of time with you biking, but before my workout, I can go for like a 20-minute ride with you. Would you like to do that?" He's like, "Would you?" I said, "Yes." So as much as in my brain, I told myself the story today, I have to get my workout in. So I
Well,
had to,
that was a workout.
yes, I had to change it's not like muscular workouts. So I had to change. It's still a workout, It's just, you get two in one. You go spend time with your son and you get
Yeah, I mean, you're really typifying those is that how much of what our calculation is our available time,
Mm,
and it doesn't go away. Like I'm even today when I have to schedule time with my daughter now because she's busy and I'm busy,
yeah.
and so we did Washington D.C. just a couple of weeks ago, and that was our time for the year where we got to spend like a concentrated period of time. We do meals together and go to the movies together, and we talk on the phone.
Mhm.
But so much of that is she's probably the only person I have regular ad hoc unscheduled conversations with.
Mhm.
Although I still have to schedule time with her at times too, just because of both of us being busy. And now she's, as I said, I may have said this earlier, she's almost 21.
Mhm.
So, these bonding things you do, and then the bonding things will change because as he gets older, he might be interested in other
Other,
activities, and
yeah.
and you need to figure out how to to get to those things as well. I did Goju karate with my daughter for 12 years.
Yes, that's it.
So inside of that journey, we had tremendous time together and connection together, and she got to figure out Dad was a bully. I'm just kidding you, by the way, but because I was bigger. And I wouldn't really hold back. I would say, you need to come at me with all your stuff when we're doing sparring training and things like that. Because of that, she's a tougher individual. Um, we've taught her to be kind, but we've also taught her when kindness doesn't work, now you can defend yourself too. So there's so many things in the bonding thing that are really about making the time. Technically, I had no time for karate
Yeah.
because I was busy with my career. I was busy with my work, and then ultimately busy with a divorce and a career and things like that. But that time with my daughter was so powerful,
Mm,
so powerful.
yeah.
Um,
And I think it's so good because that bonding time I would have liked to do, because I put my son in judo. I like Brian and I love martial art. He's now convinced me to go back, and I was like, I'm 40, like I can't do martial art, because like one of my other dream is to be competing in like competitions of martial arts. I love martial art. I grew up just
It's an extraordinary way to learn about yourself.
Yeah,
It's a form of a discipline. It teaches you time awareness in a very special way. It can be good for self-defense. Not that, but the other thing that's very important is it actually teaches you how to avoid situations where you need self-defense. Because
absolutely.
situational awareness is an important part about the martial arts. And so and I would actually say in my own journey, because I had maybe have described earlier how self-absorbed I was, doing martial arts for a dozen years increased my self-awareness.
Yep.
It took me, it made me less, or gave me a path to being less self-absorbed. So there's a lot to be said for martial arts in general. And then if you're training with a child,
Mm.
you get that kind of bonding time. And I will say, like, the kinds of things that have happened during the, learning, my daughter has learned a level of trust with me that she may not even completely have. I mean, trust is something we would like all as parents to have 100% trust. But you notice, like you had said earlier, about how your daughter might sort of quasi deny doing something with a little white lie or whatever the case may be. And that's because she doesn't completely trust you.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's something to heal. That's something to work on.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I think has been indicative of me in my daughter's journey and my journey with her is that she shared with me some of her identity aspects 2 years before she told her mother,
Mm-hmm.
in terms of sexual identity and other things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And that I actually am very proud of the fact that my daughter was able to trust me, to tell me earlier. I remember when my daughter was, the stunning woman with long hair,
Mm-hmm.
and just everybody loves her, and then they immediately like her when they first see her because she's just so pleasant in appeal and energy, and she wanted to wear a tuxedo to one of the proms that she was going to.
Mm-hmm.
My now ex-wife is calling me up going, like, why isn't she wearing what I want her to wear? And I'm saying, do you talk to your daughter? She goes, what do you need? What am I supposed to know? Don't you need to tell me? But no. This is something she needs to tell you.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to your daughter.
Mm-hmm.
So you're like, one of the few times since the divorce, we had some kind of quasi words together.
Mm-hmm.
But the point is, we need to let our children express themselves as they are. We need to take the judgment out of it. And those are the things that create those bonds. And then the other thing is by creating bonds, we get to see who our child is, as opposed to try to shoehorn them into something.
Mm-hmm.
One of the other things that I'm going to close out my conversation on this subject about bonding, but along the way, for some reason, my daughter had said she wanted to be an engineer or an architect.
Mm-hmm.
So we drove around to schools and visited schools for engineering and architecture.
Mm-hmm.
And we were like trying to figure out whether she wanted to be an architect or an engineer. She wasn't quite sure yet. So this was in 11th grade. Her mother is sitting next to me, and I'm staring at the back of my daughter's head, and the guidance counselor that's helping her pick out her 12th grade curriculum is facing us. And so I'm really looking at the back of her head. She's over here on the left. And I said, I want you to know, because I'm hearing her picking out all these courses. And she had been involved in crew for the theater, and even did, and by the way, in her senior year, she was a student director of one of the shows. Like, she clearly had a passion for this stuff. And so in 11th grade, sitting down at the end of the year, talking about her 12th grade curriculum, I told her that I help people get out of job jail all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Because they've picked a pathway that was for other people and not for themselves.
Yeah.
And I want you to make sure that you do what you're passionate about and not what you think other people want of you.
Mm-hmm.
And then she picked theater as what she's studying.
Mm-hmm.
So whether or not my words were the words or not, after she left to go to class, the guidance counselor had said, you should have seen her eyes light up when you were talking like that.
Mm.
Meanwhile, I was getting daggers from my wife, because I have a feeling the engineering conversation that she was having was coming from her. It was actually my ex-wife at that point.
Yeah.
So where I'm going with this whole thing is that by bonding, and having bonding time, we learn about our children.
Yeah.
And then our children teach us about themselves in their expression around the bonding time we have with them.
Yeah.
There is nothing that you can do more damage with than to take that for granted. Our time with our children, we'll never get back if we don't ever get it. And I just wanted to stress for anybody is that the bonding part, the time that we use to build bonding, the time we spend with them that creates those bonds is insurmountable. And I missed a few, because I was a road warrior, I missed some of those early years with my daughter. But I am so grateful for how karate,
Yes.
in our case, karate gave us more time together, because that's also what gave my daughter the ability to understand that she could trust me with information, without judgment, without non-positive reaction. In fact, just getting more love, just like, and to this day, she tells me stuff that she doesn't tell her mom.
And, like, it's important to talk about that bonding that you have with your daughter, how, like, something of what you said triggers something another coach of mine had said yesterday to me about detachment. And there's another term, I listened to the book as well, the one more rule. I forgot how he pronounced that word. It's a word that's a little bit too long for my brain to remember. But what he means was, because he has 3 girls and they're all very athletic. He used to be an Olympic champion. And so now his 3 girls are following into his footsteps. They won gold, they won silver. He raised amazing kid. And I was like, how do you do it raising 3 amazing kids? And they're all different. And something that what he said to me really stuck profoundly with me. He said, I love my children to death, but I am not attached. Like, I know one day they will leave, they will need to make their own path, but I'm not attached. Like, I am not trying to pass on my dream of being an Olympian to them. I'm letting them discover for themselves why I'm discovering who they are and what they want to be and what kind of woman they want to become, and just showing them and supporting them and loving them. But he has no attachment to them, in the sense that he sees his journey as, my spirit self is here, their spirit is there. We are come together as a contract, and I'm doing my best to give them the tools and the love that they need so that they can spread their own wings, which is what we're trying to do with our children, as imperfectly as we can do that. And I think there's so much to learn out of our imperfection as well. It makes us better. So I don't want people who, parenting is hard enough. There's no book and you can read so much. We can still screw up anyway. But I find this is what Brian and I love. That's why we kind of love sometimes a little bit of mess in our home. But I find beauty in the mess. So my message is, screw up. It's okay. Learn from the screw up and make it even better. Use it
and then heal. Please
Yeah.
heal. Make it a point to go back and set a path for healing. So, the important part of you as a parent,
Yeah.
As you are learning to let go of the time, what we call the temporal pacing that makes it so you do get angry and
Yeah.
yell, is when you learn to relax and be patient on those things. You're creating healing in the environment, and everybody wins,
Exactly.
including your parents.
Yep.
Because as you shift, that yelling mom no longer is an affectation in your journey, and therefore she gets an opportunity to energetically heal too. I firmly believe in multi-generational healing. So please look at it from this idea is the truest of honors that we can do is to make sure that we are showing up with giving the time, being patient, understanding that the difference between conditional and unconditional love, and being aware how conditional love can be very damaging if we're not careful. In fact, as we had already described in your conversation with your daughter and your son, is that she's walking around with the perception that she's not as loved. And your brother and your sister were walking around with the conception that that they were not as loved.
Mm-hmm.
And now we see in all of the things we talked about how powerful it is for us to just lean in on that bonding time and be patient and be conversational about our style of correcting a child's behavior as opposed to emotionally charged about those things, and letting them understand and learn on the process. I will say this as a final thought from my perspective is the bonding time I spent with my daughter made me a vastly better human being. Mm-hmm. If I had been a parent to my daughter, this is no lamentation or regret on my part, but if I had known what I'd known from being a parent with my daughter early enough, maybe my marriage would have been a different marriage. I would have probably met a different woman though, because there's more to a marriage than just what I was. Yeah. But the idea is we become better human beings by learning to be the best parents we can be, and being open to adjusting our journeys so that we can let go of those things that we know aren't working. I mean, you instinctively, when we talked about your yelling, you instinctively knew it wasn't working. It's just that's a pattern you learned. And that's when I talked about from the very beginning is I didn't want to be a parent, so I didn't do to my kids that which was done to me. And here you are in the pattern. So your responsibility is to heal from that voice from the past so that you can break that pattern. And you can do them both at once. You can heal and break the pattern at the same time.
And I want to end it with this because it's important. Like kids, when they're young, they can't really they don't have all the judgment, the tools to be able to make a complete analysis of the situation. So it is my responsibility to make my daughter feel more loved, to feel, to give her that extra attention that maybe my son doesn't need as much, but he still does need, because
well, yeah, you can't just sacrifice one for the other.
Because the quiet one doesn't just because they're quiet doesn't mean that they don't need your attention either, because that's another misconception. Because they're so good and they're rolling on their own, you're thinking they're fine, but they also need tending. They just don't ask it to you. And then there's the one that screams and yells for attention all the time, and you're so focused on that one you forget the other one. So you have to find a balance in those two. So I know I have a job to do with regards to my daughter, which I'm so grateful for this podcast for that, and I hope it is also helpful for my audience as well. The other thing I want to mention, as you grow older, at a certain level, you must take responsibility for how you grew up. You can't blame it all on your parents. You can't blame it all on somebody else or an external thing, because you got to look. I think the moment I stop blaming other people and taking my own self-responsibility, whether it's in my failed marriage or in a promotion or whatever, looking back, going, okay, maybe like 90% of it wasn't my fault, but there is a 10% that belongs to me. And what can I do about the 10% so I don't repeat that same pattern? And I find that the way my outlook in life is, when I don't play the victim mode, when I actually go, because I want to send the message very clearly. You can grow up and be a little bit messed up because your parents kind of didn't do it properly, didn't have the proper tool themselves from their own generation, their own parents and stuff. But as you become the adult, the story must change. You are in control. You are in the driver's seat.
Well, you can be in control. I just, to be clear about this, is that people will, blaming can continue on if you stay a reactive energy. Exactly. It's as you become aware, then you get the opportunity to take responsibility. Yeah. And then, and only then, once you've taken responsibility, can you really begin to heal.
That's right.
If you stay reactive, you're not going to heal, especially since you're saying the reason why I am is because.
Yeah.
As opposed to I am on a path to betterness and to authenticity and to better care and healing and all those other things. So I'm sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to, it's just like I was screaming out the idea. Is how to just point out is that the difference between
Mm-hmm.
healing and being stuck,
Yeah.
improving and remaining in prison, is whether or not we are actively engaged in that ownership and awareness and development process.
Yeah.
And you cannot heal, you cannot improve until you say it's in my power to do so, and I'm responsible for that power.
That's it. Because I think you can break away from any prison that you make up in your head. Whether, like, I can tell my story. I look back, I can say like the one remark of my dad that he said to me, and it could stay imprinted in my head, but I choose that what they said, put it into context. You know, when you were young, we don't have context. So something that your mom and dad reacted to you, you interpret it as like directly personal to you. So I'll give you a great example, and it still stays with me. Like, as a young kid, my dad told me, when I sweep the floor, that why can't I learn how to clean the house the way anybody does it? Like, look at my little sister who was 7 years younger than me, and she was so little, she can sweep the floor as if she's been doing this forever. She knows how to clean the house. Why can't you do it like she does? And so if I took that and I carry it to my adulthood and go, interpret as my dad doesn't love me as much as he loves my sister, because he seems to think that she's better at cleaning, and then you generalize it in your whole entire life of, okay, means this and that. So yes, it did affect me when I was a little kid. I am like, okay, so I must not be good at cleaning. Like, I can't even hold a goddamn broom properly. Like, I don't even know what I don't even know how I'm supposed to hold the broom, because now I'm so nervous that every time I actually sweep the floor, the first response is, am I holding this broom properly? Does this look okay? And then now I grow older, I go, how ridiculous was that I interpret that one single comment to follow for the rest of my life. And like, when I do something professionally, I'm like, I hear the dialogue of my dad going, you sure you holding this meeting okay? Like, are you in charge of this? Are you holding this properly? Are you carrying? Are you writing your pen? And so you generalize in everything. I'm like, oh my God, this is so crazy. But now I realize he didn't mean it in that way. He made a comment, what he noticed, and just putting things in perspective. So I don't generalize, because it followed me for a while where I thought I must not be good at anything because I can't hold a broom
Right.
properly.
I think you just justified why bonding time and ample bonding time is so important, is because it gives a greater weight to the positive stuff in a child's journey than those non-positive moments that they might retain. And, as I said, so many of my clients who come to me for weight release, they remember the moments when a parent made a comment, and scarring moment. And a moment that they had so much shame involved, they couldn't even talk about it. So they gave them even more room to carry it longer. And so you just typified everything, and it was this like bonding time, which is what we started to talk about, I think, or what we aimed to talk about. Bonding time is so important because it creates that bigger pile of pluses than those few negatives and non-positives that could show up.
And you can filter too. As you become an adult, you can filter. I can look back at different events. I go, oh, that I could have easily chose the path to go, oh God, like my father was really unjust with me. He was too harsh on me in this way. But I didn't take that path because he taught me very, very young to be mentally resilient since I was a little kid. He goes, everything is all in your head. How do you perceive it? I don't know, like we would go for walks in the morning early at 6.
Oh, bonding time.
Yeah, bonding time. Yeah. And 6 in the morning. And he would repeat these different things from the temple, because his father was a monk. And so he would repeat these wisdom to us. And I would soak it all in because I love, wisdoms and stories. And I've learned so young that I had to train my mental resilience. And he said, everything is all in the mind. So somebody can inflict really horrible pain and harm to you, but you have every power to turn it into either something extremely negative or something extremely positive. And whenever I am encountered with every challenges in life, I know I have the option. I can go down this path and dwell and do the crying and like the poor me and all of that stuff. And it may feel good at that moment, but if I stay stuck in it, I will have a harder time digging myself out of it. Then I could just rip off the bandage, which is what I've learned to do with my father. He taught me if there is a burn or you scarred yourself, you can try to just like temporarily just cover it, or you can really deal with it the hard way. So in life, I always like to eat the hard stuff first and then be rewarded with a dessert.
Oh, I wish I was that good. Although I do eat my food, my Brussels sprouts, and then I get dessert. But hey,
Yeah,
this is the longest conversation you've had on your show, isn't it? I think
absolutely.
it's going on like 17 hours or something like that.
So we are going to close this up for our audience, and then I'm sure Brian and I will find other topics as well, because I got my patient boyfriend that's waiting upstairs as well. He's been very sweet. Brian and I will definitely have other topics that we can go on forever, like the two friends just going on a conversation. But I want to leave with the last word. Brian, if you want to leave the last word to the audience, thank you so much for your precious time. I love the journey and the time that I get to preciously. I will never have the same moment, the same conversation again. And thank God it's being recorded.
Oh, I don't. So you're asking if I have like a quote or a pithy statement or an idea to share with your
Whatever you
audience?
want to share. I just want
Oh,
you to close it and end the conversation, as I always give this to all of my guests. It's a way of me showing respect.
okay. I'll do this. The show sign off that I use for Million Dollar Feeling for the time being is go out into the world and be kind, be healthy, have fun, and live a great life, whatever that means to you. That's $1 million feeling.
Thank you so much, Brian. Thank you, audience. Have a great one.